Hi again, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Next Chapter, a podcast featuring alumni from the College of Fine Arts and Communication here at Western Illinois University. My name is Buzz Hoon. I'm the interim dean for the college, and I'm also the host of the podcast. In each episode, we feature an alumnus from one of our programs in the college. Today, I'm talking with Abby Klug, who received a Master of Arts degree in Museum Studies in 2020. Welcome to the program, Abby.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
And as we always start the program, we always like to say, Abby, what's going on in your life? Where are you? Give everybody a life update, and then we'll talk about your career.
For sure. Yeah. So I'm still in the Quad Cities. I live in Davenport, and I took a position at Edwards Creative in Milan, Illinois, a couple months ago now, maybe 3 or 4, as an exhibits project manager. So I work there with mainly their museum clients in planning and producing and then installing museum exhibits.
Great. Okay. So let's go all the way back. You're from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Is that right?
Cedar Falls.
Cedar Falls,
Iowa. Pretty close. Okay. Yeah.
Pretty close. Yeah. But so you're an Iowa person growing up here. And I always like to kind of talk about the impact of a community on somebody's development. How do you think that growing up in Iowa may have impacted you, or the community that you're in? Did it help foster anything professionally?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born and raised in Cedar Falls, but I went to a really small high school kind of right outside of the city. So it was a really tight-knit kind of community, very small class sizes, which really allowed me to express myself and allow myself to do a lot of different opportunities. So whether that be athletics, musically, the arts, there was just a lot of opportunities open in kind of the smaller school district that I went to, which was really great, and which I think allowed me to pursue something a little bit more creative in my career, because I was able to find that passion early on. And I definitely think it's nice to have a community support around you. And no matter where you are in Iowa, especially the Midwest, Iowa, Illinois, I feel like your communities support you as a young person going into your future. So I definitely think that helped a lot coming into my professional life.
Abby, looking over your work record and everything that you provided about yourself to me, which I definitely appreciate, I see 2 things. I see a really great work ethic, which is, we'll talk more about that in just a moment. But as you said, this creative side of you, where do you think that comes from? Do you think that mom, dad, somebody in the family helped push that along?
Well, I'm the youngest of 4. So I kind of had I really like to be the center of attention. And I really like to entertain and kind of make people laugh. And that was always since I was little. So I always had to, somehow find a way to get the attention on me as a kid. So I think that definitely expressing myself in, creative outlets, whether that be writing or like drama, theater kind of things, was definitely fostered by my role in the family. And so everybody was always like, oh, well, Abby's off talking, doing something again. So that was definitely one thing.
Well, at least you're honest about that.
Yep. You have to, admit to your faults sometimes.
Oh, I think that's a great thing to foster in a young person, is to have them, not be afraid of finding ways that they can show express their creativity. I think that, as you said, you must have, within high school, sort of explored some different areas. You talked about being in music.
Mm-hmm. I was in band and musicals. I can't sing, so don't ask me to do that. But when I was younger, I was gung-ho on going to Juilliard and being a Broadway star. But that was the one thing I was missing, is that I can't sing. But I was in band, and I was able to do a lot of different music concerts and honor bands and things like that, which was really fun. And especially being on stage in a musical was also a really great experience too.
So when you're 17 years old, and people, I'm sure in your community, like every community here, even in Macomb, people are saying, Abby, where are you going to go? What are you going to do for the rest of your life? What are you going to major in? Did you have things figured out going into undergrad?
I thought I did. At 17, I was going to go to a community college and get my associates and then go on to get my bachelor's degree. I wanted to be an English teacher in high school. My English teachers definitely were big inspirations for me during that time of my life and still today even. So I really wanted to be like them. However, I'm on like halfway through my senior year of high school. I kind of had like a crisis. I'm like, I don't know. Do I want to go to the school I had chosen? And so I wanted to explore some other options. And that's when I looked at Wartburg College in Waverly, Iowa. My best friend had already committed there to play volleyball. And so I gave it a look, tried out for the cheerleading team, had to be at the center of attention as always. And I decided to go there. And I think that really changed my life for the better. And since then, I mean, my career path has definitely changed. I am not an English teacher, but I definitely have enjoyed the ride thus far.
So I guess my question was about Wartburg and the fact that it's a smaller school. Did you find that you had a better chance to grow individually, and explore some different areas during your time at Wartburg?
Most definitely. When I first moved in, I was a little bit worried about the size. I was concerned that I wouldn't be able to get the same opportunities at a smaller school as I would at, like, say, a larger Division I university. However, that was actually opposite. I was able to, kind of like my high school experience, pursue a variety of different opportunities, whether that be studying abroad, doing more academically inclined like conferences and undergraduate research, and athletics as well. So it definitely allowed me to foster some of my passions as well as learn my vocation in life as well.
So what was your major? When did you graduate? And how did you find WIU?
For sure. So I was an English and history double major with a minor in Spanish, and I graduated in 2019. So I actually found out about WIU because there were quite a few history majors from Wartburg that had graduated before me who went to WIU to get their master's in museum studies. And there was such a trend actually for more like the funnel from Wartburg to WIU, that they created a 4+1 program with Wartburg, which allows students to complete a year of master's work while a senior at undergrad. So that is how I first not only learned about WIU, but also learned about museum studies as a field. I kind of went through this, I call it my undergraduate midlife crisis. When I was at Wartburg, and I was trying to decide what I wanted to do with my life after graduation. And I really liked history. I really liked English, and I enjoyed the stories and how they interconnected between the two. And so I'm like, Abby, why don't you go into museum work? And that ever since then, I wanted to pursue my degree in museum studies. And that's how I came to WIU.
I'm glad you brought that up, Abby, about how museum studies, for those that don't know, is really about telling somebody else's story. And it's just a different way, the way that you present it. As you got more into the classes, was that something you were learning to do along the way?
Yes, absolutely. So a main question I get is, museum studies, what do you do with that? And so it's very hard to describe to people who don't understand the field, but with museum studies, you get all of the tools you need to tell a story. So at WIU, we not only learn the collection side of work, we learn the exhibitions, the education, how to get visitor info in visitor studies, and even digital initiatives was a class I took too. So there's a lot of different pieces to telling that story. And with the museum studies degree, you get a little bit of each of that piece to help with that. So it's definitely more complicated than the museum studies overarching term makes it seem.
Yeah, I've often been surprised at all the tools that they're putting within your belt when they send you out there, that even though you may have a real interest in a specific area, you still have knowledge about how everything fits together and how it works. So let's talk a little bit about some of the students and faculty within the program. What do you have some fond memories of?
Absolutely. One of the main things that drew me to the WIU program was the atmosphere and the people that created that atmosphere. Coming out of Wartburg, I was really looking for that same kind of feeling, and I definitely got that with the WIU faculty. Kelly Larrabee was one of the first people I interacted with, the admissions counselor, and to say that was an enjoyable experience would be an understatement. She was just the most kind, sweet person. She was so upfront with me about what life was like at the WIU campus, the program itself, just a very kind woman who was always asking what she could do to help. And then next I met Dr. Pam White, who is equally as wonderful as Kelly, and just this incredible woman with an incredible background. And it was wonderful to not only learn with her but also work with her as her graduate assistant. And she definitely helped foster me into the person I am today, and not only the student that I was, but the professional I am today too. And then finally, Victoria Udy, I miss her with all my heart. She was just a breath of fresh air in school. She was always there if you had any questions, if you wanted to vent about anything. She was just a very relatable person who had a very distinct love for her cats. And she always showed us her cat pictures, which made my day every time.
So when somebody moves from undergrad into graduate classes, I think that there's the initial shock of, this is not what I was doing as an undergrad. Oftentimes, even though you had transitioned through the integrated program, you had done that, but just the in-depth exploration of a particular subject area and what you were expected to know and be able then to talk about or write about, I'm sure. Can you talk a little bit about the difference of a graduate program?
Absolutely. And I will be the first to admit too, that was kind of a transition that was difficult for me, coming from a more broader, English as a discipline to a more specific museum studies graduate program. And so moving into the grad program, you're expected to know the more finite details. You have to be very specific in your research and your citations and what information you put in your papers and homework than you would. Obviously, you have to have that in some degree for undergrad, but it's just more intense in graduate school. And I think I was really nervous about that when I first went in. I was frozen with fear for my first paper that I had to write, and it was just a reflection essay. So nothing really super in-depth research wise, but I was still nervous. I'm like, I don't know how to write at this level. But I think anyone coming into the graduate program, and accepted into a graduate program, you have those skills, and your professors, if you have any questions, especially in a graduate program, they're there to help you with that. And so I definitely had to get over that hump myself. But after that, it was not smooth sailing, but it was much easier and I had more confidence.
Yeah, because it's funny. You start to see yourself as a colleague, because that's really what you're transitioning into. Exactly. Is you're becoming a colleague of the people that you're studying under. And you mentioned the assistantship that you had, and what kind of, you had an assistantship with Pam?
Yeah, I was one of the museum studies program graduate assistants. So I worked with Pam in Victoria. It's so weird because that was another issue that I had, was calling my professors by their first name. Like I always put doctor in front of it, and they're like, "Oh no, call me Victoria. No, call me Pam." Like, I can't. I don't know how to do that. But yes, I was their graduate assistant, so I was able to help them. My first semester pre-COVID was specifically about recruitment and visiting other undergraduate institutions, Wartburg included, to talk about the museum studies program and what it can offer for potential incoming students. So that was a great time. We definitely visited a lot of classes, and it was great to talk about the program with other students. And then we also worked on just, social media kind of aspects for the program, really just promoting it to others who may not have known about it.
because they do so many wonderful things, providing so much wonderful experience that I know that that's something that Pam's been working very hard at, trying to remind people that, hey, look what our students are doing. And one of those things that you had mentioned is the WIU Symposium, which again is about connecting you with other people. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So we teamed up with St. Ambrose University Art History with Terry Schweitzer there. We also have, WIU has a 4+1 program with St. Ambrose as well for museum studies. But we paired up with them in January, February of 2020. And we put together it's kind of wordy, but a museum studies and art history symposium. So we allowed graduate students to present museum studies papers and St. Ambrose students to present art history papers. We also had kind of like a mingle, like a meet and greet with other professionals in the field, the networking opportunity, and a panel of museum professionals at the time as well, who we were allowed to ask questions with about what it was like working in a museum field. So we were able to plan all of that at the Figgy, and it went off really great. It was a wonderful time to meet potential students, former students, and network with people in the field as well. So that was a really great time.
And one of the other things that I really admire about the program is the GEMS graduate, and I forget what the acronym stands for, but it is, won't you talk about that student group?
Yeah, so GEMS is the Graduate Experiences in Museum Studies group, which is yes, no problem, the extracurricular group for the Museum Studies program. Anybody else can join too, but it is a lot mainly just with Museum Studies students. So what we did there was pre-COVID, we would take a semester trip every year or every semester to someplace kind of close, but not necessarily in driving distance that you would go to every week or so. So my first semester, we went to Kansas City, excuse me. I get them confused. Kansas City. And we stayed there for a weekend. So we were able to go to quite a few museums there, most notably the Nelson Atkins, which was incredible. I had never been there before, and kind of experience and network with current professionals as well in those specific museums. So we had a tour at the Nelson Atkins with one of the collections assistants, I believe. And then we went to the Museum of Toys and Miniatures and got to participate in an educational program that a WIU Museum Studies student had created during her internship. So it was a really fun experience and a great time to get to know classmates and just kind of explore.
So along the way, at what point did you start to see yourself in a potential area that you said, I think this is where I'm going to find my skills? For
sure. I don't think I ever had that like aha moment during graduate school. And I don't know if that's just me. It could easily just be me. But so most people come into the museum studies program thinking, okay, I want to work in collections or I want to be in education. And I didn't really ever have that. I enjoyed it all, but I didn't have a niche that I felt like I fit into. I had done a collections internship before. I had done administrative internships and education internship. And I just didn't really feel where I liked it all. I liked it all, which I think was the problem. So once I got my first real job, big girl job out of grad school, I was at the National Pearl Button Museum in Muscatine, Iowa. And something I want to touch on about the Museum Studies program at Western Illinois is the fact that you learn so many pieces of the museum world. It really helps when you get a job in a smaller museum, because not every museum is like the Nelson Atkins, where you have a person in every department. A lot of the smaller museums around us, it's one or two employees. And that was definitely the case at the Pearl Button Museum. I was the assistant director there. So I worked in collections, I worked in education, exhibitions. And so I was able to get that more well-rounded experience in all of those spaces there. But I think I really came into my own and really found my niche by getting this position at Edwards Creative, where I'm able to kind of help in all levels of the exhibition process and the preparation for exhibition installation. So not only do we help my favorite part is obviously the research. It's so super exciting to kind of dive into a topic and get excited about presenting this to someone, to visitors. But I really enjoy helping that all come together and putting those puzzle pieces together. So I think I found it, maybe, cross my fingers, in the exhibition portion of it.
Oh, Abby, you're such a young person. You got so much growth ahead of you. It's exciting, but I'm glad that you have found success in this particular area. Let's talk about the importance of museums and exhibitions, as you said, to tell the stories of what's been going on in so many different ways of what society has deemed as maybe important and things that they want to tell other people about.
Absolutely. And we did some research in my visitor studies course. I was taking that course second semester of my first year. So 2020, prime lockdown pandemic period. And it was during this period where a lot of museums were closing too. And so for our visitor studies, we analyzed how important museums were to the community on an online basis, like social media. And so through that, we found that museums aren't only places of information, but they're also places of camaraderie and of community. So people were able to find a common ground in, say, a piece that the Art Institute of Chicago posted. Or I remember there was a cowboy who was giving tours of his museum that was closed for social media at this time that people just adored. So I really feel like the museum field and the role of a museum today is so much more than just telling a story, but it's also telling the visitor story too, and allowing them to come together and share those. And I believe the American Alliance of Museums released some research just in November that shows that the majority of United States citizens find museums to be the most trustworthy sources for information. And if that doesn't tell you how important museums are for information and for sharing knowledge, then I don't know what will. So I definitely think that the museums have a lot of responsibility to communicate and disseminate information in an appropriate and correct way to the visitors. So, especially in today's world.
So when you're involved in the creation of an exhibit, Abby, and I assume that's kind of what you're doing, are you thinking about the audience? Are you when you find the materials, the research that you're going to present, how much of the audience are you trying to craft that for?
Absolutely. The audience and the visitors for a museum are everything. In the switch from the 20th to the 21st century museum is the phrase was a museum became about something to becoming for someone. And I believe that wholeheartedly. With every exhibit you make, you have to put the visitor in mind first. How are they going to take this information? How are they going to understand this information? So when we are starting an exhibit, we always ask the museum that we're working for, what kind of audience are you wanting to attract with this? Are you wanting to come visit this exhibit? So we can kind of allow for more visitors of different backgrounds and different ages to relate to the exhibit as well.
So let's talk about how you kind of talked a little bit about how COVID-19 and the pandemic has impacted museums. Are you seeing, people come back, or people now a little bit more appreciative of the opportunity to come back?
I would say so. I worked at the Putnam Museum and Science Center in Davenport briefly after graduating. And while I was there, it was like the winter of 2021. And there were quite a few visitors who would come in, and they would be so appreciative of the ability to get out of their homes and have a fun, educational, familial experience. And I think that that's across the board, just ways that people are able to spend time with their family in a safe and educational environment. And I've also seen how museums are kind of tailoring to visitors now in a post-pandemic world, post in air quotes. So at Edwards, we have been working on RFID tags. So those you're able to interact with an interactive without your hands, without touching it.
Okay.
So we've been kind of experimenting with different ways of doing that, ways to make things easier to clean, and just ways to branch out of the museum physically, but also digitally as well.
Yeah, I was going to ask you how the digital landscape is impacting you as well, and you've given such a great example there. Any other things that somebody like myself coming into an area where we say, wow, I'm amazed at your ability to bring in new technology and help tell that story?
Yeah. I think the Figge Art Museum here in Davenport is also a really great example. They have a robot who can take tours around the museum as well. And they've also done a really great job of really honing in on their digital experiences. So they would have artist talks, but it would be solely on Zoom, or they would have curator talks where the curator would be in the museum, but people would be watching via Zoom or a different platform. And so I think making that content more accessible to the visitors and really being intentional about how you do that is definitely a big thing in the museum field right now. And both the museums here in the area are doing a fantastic job of that.
So, Abby, as we continue into the future, and you've just started into your profession, and I think it's just so awesome. I'm excited to see where your career is going to take off. And right now you're in a familiar area of the country, in a familiar place, and doing some new and exciting things. Do you have any long-term goals where you say, and within 20 years, I want to be,
Sure.
Do you have any long-term huge goals where you say, I'm going to be in charge of a large museum?
I have quite a few different plans for myself. We'll see which one, catches.
Yeah.
But I really would like to get my doctorate degree in either something within English or history or a combination of the two. I'd really like to work in collections and archival work at some point in my life. With rare collections would be fantastic. That is like top goal. But if I end up anywhere where I'm able to express myself creatively, do research and learn every day, I'll be happy. And if that is here in Iowa or if it's in, France, that's okay with me. I'm open to whatever.
Okay. Well, as I said earlier in the show, I looked at all the jobs you have had in your young period of time, and you have not been afraid to take on, whether it's a waitress or working, in different capacities. You seem to have that sort of work ethic, and so as we transition into recommendations for college students, somebody that may be like yourself, kind of exploring and thinking, is this a possibility for me? What kind of recommendations do you have?
Sure. One of the things I always tell new students, whether that's undergraduate or graduate, is break out of your comfort zone. Go present at a conference. Submit your paper to be published in that paper into a journal. I really think that you're not going to find your vocation when you're in your box that you're used to. So take chances and just get involved, whether that be, in your just a small history club, or whether that be, in your college's band or theater program, any end of the spectrum. Just get involved, because you're able to not only make friends and make great memories, but you might find a passion and a way to continue that passion into your future as well. So that's something I'm always like to tell new students, because life isn't found in your comfort zone. I think that's a phrase that I've seen before on Pinterest or something. Mm-hmm. But and my other more minor recommendation is find your favorite spot on campus where you could be productive and claim that as your spot. I had a spot on campus at WIU Quad Cities that I would always go to, right by the skywalk, where I would be my most productive. I don't know what it was about it, but that was always helpful for me.
You mean you were looking at the river while you're studying?
No, it was the other way. It was looking at building A. That skywalk. Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, Abby, I think that what's really cool is you have stayed connected with the program. In fact, I think Pam sent me a picture, and you have been also still with other graduates.
Yeah, I think that's really great. What's great about the Museum Studies Master's program is it's relatively small, so you get to know everyone that you're with, and whether that's for good or bad. I mean, it's great to connect with your former classmates in the professional field. So recently, one of my classmates, Claire Tobin, she is at the German American Heritage Center here in Davenport as their assistant director, and Edwards Creative just did an exhibit for them. So I went to their ribbon cutting ceremony and was able to celebrate that with her as well. So it's and you always keep in touch, whether that be via social media or just texting each other every day. And it's great to kind of have those conversations with someone who understands the field and what you're going through, and ask for advice in that way.
Well, that's terrific, Abby. And I'm enjoyed this conversation with you. And as I said, I'm really excited to see what your future holds. So hopefully I will meet you face to face someday, and or maybe I'll see you in a museum.
Maybe. Yes. Thank you so much for having me today.
And thanks to all those viewers that are out there watching to this episode. We will continue to have alumni from our college departments on the podcast, and we hope that you will continue to support our programs at Western Illinois University. So until the next episode, stay safe, take care, and God bless.